There is nothing more unequal than the equal distribution to unequals. You're going, what? I'll explain that here in just a moment. In this episode, I'm going to reveal what the first false belief pattern is that most wealthy people get trapped in and how to solve it. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I've been helping people for nearly 5 decades now optimize their assets, minimize taxes, empower what I call their authentic wealth, which is more than just their money. It is their legacy, it is their beliefs, their experiences, and I talk a lot on this channel about the 3 dimensions. It's not just about financial. It's about the foundational assets and the intellectual assets. So let me take a moment and frame what I mean by this 3-legged stool, these 3 dimensions of authentic wealth. And then I'm going to reveal the first false belief pattern that gets so many successful, wealthy people regretting the way they set up their trust or their will or their estate plan. And I'll show you who are the culprits that basically do that to them. So whenever I talk to people, I travel a lot, and sometimes, when you're on a flight, I snooze, and then about 15 minutes before you get to the destination, that's when the flight attendant comes on and says, put your seat in the most upright, uncomfortable position, and you wake up, and I finally introduce myself to the person next to me, and invariably, as we get acquainted, they'll say, well, what do you do? I'll usually pull out maybe a Delta Airlines napkin, and I'll draw a great big A on the napkin, okay, which stands for abundance. And I'll simply say, well, I help people optimize assets. But let me explain what I mean by that, because I like to talk about what true or authentic wealth is, because when we say the word assets, what kind of things do most people think of first when we say that word? And of course, predictably, the person sitting next to me on the plane will say, well, maybe your house, real estate, your cash, your stocks, your bonds. I say, yep, so I'll write these down over here. They don't know why I'm doing it. But yeah, I say, yep. But when you really think about it, those are just things, okay? They're just material possessions, but we do put them under the financial category. This is the financial dimension. So let me ask you this question. What are the most important assets that you value, that you cherish, that you possess on this earth? Now, they know because of my tonality, I'm not talking about the money. And they will usually say these things first. They'll either say, well, my family or my health or my values. Those are the top 3 all the time. And I say, yep, it would also include maybe your well-being, spirituality, talents, future heritage, character, friends, charitable foundations, and so forth. Now, they may have brought up their education, and if so, I'll put it up here. But normally I'll say, well, there's a 3rd dimension of this 3-legged stool that involves the wisdom that we gain throughout our life, and that's our intellectual assets. Now, wisdom is a product of knowledge times experiences. That gives us our wisdom. But this dimension would also include your formal education, reputation, methods, systems, traditions, alliances, ideas, and skills. So these are the 3 dimensions of authentic wealth. Again, like a 3-legged stool. Because a lot of people go through life and they oftentimes have spent maybe their health accumulating their wealth, and later in life, they're spending all their wealth trying to regain their health, which is really silly. Or many wealthy people have come to me frustrated, and they accumulated their wealth at the expense of relationships with their spouse, their kids, their grandkids, or their God, and they're going, I'm bankrupt in these other areas. What was all that about? I'm not going to take this stuff with me. There's no luggage racks on hearses, as the song says. And so they're coming to me because they're frustrated. They want to get their life back in balance. Well, it's hard to do sometimes, but that's what motivated me to write the book Entitlement Abolition. And I'm going to gift you a copy of this at the end of this episode. But let me continue with this first of 3 false belief patterns that the book addresses, and it will help you solve these, okay? Now, when we talk about these 3 dimensions, there are a lot of things that people flat out give up choice and control. And there's one big category of assets that people just flat out give up choice and control in America. That's what we must contribute back to society. Most governmental systems in the world have a method whereby we must give back to society. And that normally comes in the form of what? Taxes. Now, taxes are actually an asset. Most people view taxes as a liability, but as I teach in my book, see, when we use taxes properly, okay, we get highways, we get police protection and so forth, we get education for our children. We may not agree with how the government is a steward over our tax dollars. Let's not go there right now. But taxes are actually an asset. What a lot of CPAs and tax attorneys forget within 2 years of graduation is that in America, in the Internal Revenue Code, you can actually, if you take ownership, meaning you take ownership for your own future, you take ownership in a home, you take ownership for your own retirement, you can actually redirect otherwise payable taxes to causes you support. These are not tax loopholes. You're actually taking pressure off of the government to have to take care of you or your widows or orphans or what have you. And so there's certain things that if you take ownership, you can redirect otherwise payable tax. You're actually helping out America more than just rolling over and paying more in taxes. You'll notice a lot of arguments are about, let's be self-reliant instead of government reliant. When people don't take ownership for their health, they want the government to, pay for their health. They want the government to pay for them in retirement. They want the government to pay for their college. And because they don't want to take ownership for that. But the secret to American wealth has always been in ownership. Deeds, titles, and articles of incorporation. You look at countries, communistic countries that do not allow their citizens to own, and you'll see the big contrast from outer space. South Korea is lit up, vibrant, dynamic, because they allow their citizens to own. North Korea, they don't allow their citizens to own anything, and it's dark except for the presidential compound where the one light is emitting. And so the contrast is huge. So ownership is the key. So what we talk about here is how you can redirect otherwise payable tax. Now you can contribute your time, your talents to different organizations, and that sometimes is way more impactful than just writing out bigger and bigger checks in taxes or donations, because sometimes the time I spend at suicide centers and my volunteers that go with me is way more impactful, the counselors say, than just writing out bigger checks to try to house them and let the counselors take care of it. And there's reasons for that, okay? We're non-judgmental. We go in there with one purpose, and that's to lift them up and help them understand they do have a choice for a brighter future. That's another topic. What I'm trying to get at here is most governmental systems have the method of just having you pay tax. So I'm a red-blooded American. I think we should all pay our fair share of tax. But if you take ownership for your own retirement instead of relying on the government to provide for you, there's good ways. IRAs or 401ks. There's better ways, Roths. But I've never owned an IRA or 401k. Never will. I've never owned a Roth IRA or 401k, because the best way is what I call a laser fund, and it is totally tax-free. And people say, why is that tax-free? Because you're taking total ownership. Whether you live a long time or whether you die sooner than later, you, your spouse, a widow, will never be dependent on the government because of what you did with a laser fund, okay? And that's why it's tax-free. It's that cut and dry, okay? So this is the key. Now, I explain in the book I'm going to gift you how I contrast the difference in these mindsets with the example of two families, the Vanderbilt family and the Rothschild family. I don't endorse these families by any means. I won't go into depth here in this episode because I have another episode that talks about Cornelius Vanderbilt and how he just dumped money in his kids' and grandkids' laps, and it ruined, by the fourth generation, $105 million fortune was gone. Versus the Rothschilds set up what we call a family bank, not a chartered bank, a conceptual bank. And they left behind sort of how to fish to their kids and grandkids instead of just dumping fish in their lap. They left behind the wisdom, the knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits, okay? So when we look at this, I realize the first false belief pattern that was common among these wealthy people is that equal distribution was the fairest way to treat those that you care about. Now, it wasn't their fault, but I pointed out back to when they met with their estate planning attorney. And this is generally what took place. They went into the estate planning attorney to get a trust set up, okay? And the attorney, after 15 minutes of small talk, began to use some jargon. And you probably nodded your head up and down like you understood it, but you really didn't. And at some point, the attorney asked you, so what are your assets? And once they found out your net worth, what was the next question they asked you? How many kids have you got? Because what are they going to start doing? Dividing it up. Now, that's the number one rule if you want to destroy. Divide and conquer. No, united we stand. And they start to divide it up, and I'm going to show you the problem with that. And they usually will say something like, now, Jim and Mary, you want to be fair, don't you? You want to divide all of this up when you die equally among your kids, don't you? And they get you nodding up and down. And if they can get you to do that, they're thinking, hot diggity dog, I got another one. And they just take your assets and plug it into a boilerplate trust document on their computer. They take your kids' names and plug it into the computer. And when you die, chunk, 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 it's divided up and dumped in your kid's lap. And that was easy. And they think, well, that's fair, okay? Sometimes requiring that your children have to be fair. They have to sell the apartment complexes. They have to sell the business because oftentimes, because of that mentality, it requires that you kill the goose, the business or whatever, laying the golden eggs, because you have to be fair to divide it up equally, okay? So this is equal distribution. And I said at the beginning of this, there's nothing more unequal than the equal distribution to unequals. And people start, going into withdrawal when I say that. Well, let me explain it as we go through this. Regardless of its complexity, traditional estate and financial planning in this country, doing it that way, is a process of 4 Ds, where when you die, they divide it up. Then they defer sometimes, thinking by postponing they're saving tax. We dispel that myth. And then it gets dumped or distributed to ill-prepared heirs. And then it dissipates. Wealth is transferred without a system that fosters responsibility and accountability. They didn't have to do anything but just be born into this family, and they're entitled. When do I get my share? And so this is a big problem, and it ruins half the kids because they sit around waiting for their share. Now, Abraham Lincoln said the worst thing you can do for those you love is the things they can do for themselves. Robert Frost said every affluent father wishes he knew how to give his sons the hardships that made him rich. But we don't want to see our kids suffer, and what do? When we see them suffering, instead of giving them a hand up, we give them a handout, and we actually hinder them instead of help them. And then we wonder why they're not strong. I mean, my wife and I, we teach these principles at our annual Grandpa's Camp, and one year we gave all the grandkids jars with 5 caterpillars in each. And they watched in awe as they made their chrysalis, their cocoons. But I taught them this lesson, and of course, about 2 weeks later, it begins to emerge in the measure of its full creation as a monarch butterfly. And I warned them, when they see that butterfly struggle, you'll be tempted to help it out. If you do, it will die. So when you're struggling in life, Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad will be there to give you a hand up, but never a hand out. We don't want to kill you. You will gain strength by struggling through this, and we'll be there to give you a hand up. But don't ever expect a hand out, okay? They never forget that. But all too often, kids get this entitlement mindset. Will you pay for it? Can I have? I promise I won't do that again, Mom and Dad, if you'll just pay this off. You're not helping them. So this is where I talk about equal opportunity trust instead of equal distribution trust, because there's nothing more unequal than the equal distribution to unequals. Now, what I'm talking about is this. I don't think our Creator gives equal distribution of blessings, let's say of health, to all of us, regardless of how some of us, including myself, sometimes choose to abuse our bodies. We don't exercise, we take in harmful substances. Our Creator doesn't go, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you the exact same incredible health and strength that this person has over here, even though they're working out, they're eating right, they're taking care of their body, and you are just abusing your body. But I want to be fair. I want to give everybody the same health, regardless of how responsible they are with that body that they're blessed with. Our Creator doesn't do that. Our Creator gives us equal opportunities, not equal distribution. Does that make sense? So why do you want to do that? Because this whole country sometimes gets in arguments over this fairness doctrine as if the healthy people must pay for the unhealthy ones. And that gets people really perturbed. We want to make sure everybody has access to health care. But you need to be a little bit responsible and accountable instead of just, expecting everybody else to pay for your choices if they're bad. Okay. And so this is why when you learn this, and I'm going to gift you a copy of the book, you'll understand how to go to your attorney and change your trust to equal opportunity. Rules of grant. You want to give equal opportunities to all your children and grandchildren, but not equal distribution. They need to have a little bit of skin in the game. If they will do this, this, and this, they get the same opportunities equally, but not equal distribution when some of them, I've seen some kids get $5 million and in less than 9 months, they blew it and nearly killed them with their habits, partying with their friends. And other children who got $5 million, 20 years later, it's worth $100 million. And the one that blew it in 9 months is going back to the sibling saying, wait, I need my $5 million. You got it. You blew it. Well, yeah, but yeah. See, I've seen it ruin families because they didn't have to have a little bit of skin in the game in order to be able to have access to those resources. So the secret to this is to live by identifying your core values, your vision, your principles, so that your family knows what you stand for. If you don't stand for something, they're going to fall for anything, okay? And so you live by the governing principle of equal opportunities while they're alive, so that when you pass on and the trust is set up with equal opportunity rules of governance instead of when do I get my share, they're not going to expect this handout. They'll know that the rules provide for skin in the game or whatever. And so those are the governing principles instead of this equal distribution mindset. You don't want to ruin your kids. You want to give them the ability to preserve and protect and prosper, to empower them instead of enable them. Does that make sense? And so in our family, we have mottos that help support this. We have slogans, laws, manifestos, creeds, values, and vision, clarity statements. You don't have to have all of these. When I gift you this book, I want you to read mine. But why? If you have a trust, I can guarantee you your kids will never read that document, except one page that says how much they get. They're not going to read your trust. It's a bunch of legalese. But I can show you how to create a vision clarity statement, or I can give you one sheet of paper and you read the question and you push record on your phone, audio and or video, and you answer the question. And in about 90 minutes, I can capture what really matters, and your posterity for generations will read and reread, watch and rewatch, listen and re-listen to that. They will not read your trust. So it's about capturing what you believe in and leaving behind knowledge, attitudes, skills, and habits, what made you who you were, okay? Because so many times when I would ask people who were worth millions and billions, Wow, how did you do it? And they'd tell me all the time, well, oh man, I grew up after the Great Depression. My parents taught me how to work, so I have worked so hard. My kids will never have to work as hard as I did. And they always came in 20 or 30 years later, and I'd say, how's it going? They were in their retirement golden years, and they would be frustrated a lot of the times. And I'd say, what's up? And they'd go, Doug, I don't know what's wrong with my kids, and now my grandkids. They don't even know how to work. And I would say, maybe you stole that from them. Maybe in your effort to always make it easy for them. You always said what made a man out of you is how you had to overcome all the struggles, and you made life too easy for them, and now you're wondering why they're weak. Is this making sense? So that's why I have written about this. I want to gift you a copy if this is resonating with you. You'll understand how to do what I've been talking about. You'll also learn about the other 2 false belief patterns, or you can watch the episodes regarding those. But I want to gift you a copy of this 200-page book, Entitlement Abolition. It retails for $20 on Amazon, but I'll pay for the book. You simply go to entitlementabolitionbook.com and you contribute a nominal amount toward the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost. I'll fire out a hard copy to you. And then there's options in there if you like to listen and learn, watch and learn. I have a masterclass in there. But this is about you and your brighter future, how you can stay in balance and be focused and empower those you care about by having rules of equal opportunities.